evening and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. I'm Lisa Friend and I'm delighted to be your host this evening as we explore the Bavarian capital of Munich. Before we meet our special guest for the evening, I would like to just do a few fast facts about Munich. There we go. This is something that we are trying to put on every show and we like to share that with you. So the population of Munich, about 1.5 million people, very compact, very walkable, feels very livable. The best time to visit Munich, I think May and June are the best months because you have the best balance of good weather possibilities, but not quite as many crowds. July and August are absolutely fine to visit as well. And then September is a lovely time to be in Munich, but you will be dealing with the crowds that have come there specifically for Oktoberfest from the third weekend in September to the first weekend in October. Getting around Munich is easy. It's very walkable, bikeable, but the public transportation system of underground and trams is fantastic. And for about $8, you can get an all-day pass and go anywhere in the city. I would say the minimum of time you would want to spend in Munich would be 3 nights and 2 full days. If you have an extra day to give, there's plenty of stuff to do. You'll never get bored. And if you did, well, there's also a lot of day trips right outside of Munich. And then Munich, being in Germany, is on the euro. And I was just there in September and October, and I easily paid for things with cash, with credit cards, and with contactless with my phone and with my watch. So really no problem there. So I would like to introduce you to my dear friend and fellow tour guide, Daniela Wedel. She's a fascinating traveler who has deep roots in Bavaria. She's had such an interesting life living all over the world. She is an art historian. She is a former professional athlete. She is a tour guide extraordinaire. Daniela, from my heart and from the 755 people who are here joining us tonight, we welcome you to Monday Night Travel.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me. Thank you, everyone. Grüß Gott, guten Abend, and hello.
So, Daniela, we often like to ask people, how did you get started in the life that you lead, in the career that you've chosen?
Well, I'm a tour guide since 2000. And so I studied art history, as you said, art history, ancient history, and history of religion in Munich at the Ludwig Maximilian University. Then I left living in France. I was born and raised in Munich, lived my whole youth there. Then I left living in France, and then a little bit all, as you say, a little bit all over the place. So in 2000, I started working for an active travel company, Backroads, and was a guide for bicycle trips in Europe. And that was my first encounter, actually, and traveling and guiding North Americans in Europe. And then eventually, through a friend of mine who is from Seattle, he introduced me to Rick Steves, to the company Rick Steves, and the ideas and the philosophy of traveling, which I found very attractive and still do. And so I applied, and I was hoping through the company to be able to share my passion and expertise for history and for art. And was hired. And since 2003, I'm now a guide. I'm a guide for Rick Steves and work on several itineraries, and very happy still about it. Yes.
And I can tell you from the comments that we got in the previous show, how many of your former tour members are watching tonight and have such nice things to say about you. Well, I'm sure they have wonderful things to say about you because you had an excellent training regimen at the beginning.
Absolutely, I had one of the best trainers, the best.
When I led my first tour, Daniela was there to help and support me, and so I trained her. And then later, we were on a France tour, and she trained me, and everything came full circle.
Beautiful, beautiful memories. Yes, and now we're here.
Go ahead. What?
And now we're here together.
And now we're here together. I wanted to just say that I knew that Daniela was a dyed-in-the-wool true blue Bavarian when we were in France, but we went on the tour to the part of France that used to be part of Germany, and Daniela's like, come on, I know where we can get a good pretzel. So
yes. Yes, nowhere far without a pretzel. And so I could not hold back myself today from baking some pretzels. So a lot of different pretzels, but here, homemade little teeny tiny pretzel. Really good. Just had one.
Show that closer. We want to see.
Yes, there we go. So yeah, it's not bad, no?
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Just coming back home after the season on the road. So I felt like I need some home baked pretzels. Worked out nice, yes.
Wow. I have one too, but mine is not homemade. And I bought it yesterday at a place called Coffee Clutch in Seattle.
Coffee Clutch, nice.
Coffee Clutch. And I thought it would be very good, but this should be eaten upon the day you buy it, not the next day.
Probably.
Mine are not as fresh as yours are.
Yeah.
So Daniela, I said I knew that you were a dyed-in-the-wool true blue Bavarian. Can you tell me a little bit more about Bavaria and what makes it so great?
Yes, I can. Yes, still very dear to my heart, absolutely, even though I've left for a while. Yes, but so Bavaria is one of the 16 Bundesländer of Germany, which Germany is divided like the states, the different states in the US. And it is located in the southeast of Germany. It's the biggest of the Bundesländer, and the capital of the Bundesland is Munich. And my parents were born there and lived there their whole life, and I was born there, my brother. And yes, I think Bavaria is quite well known. Besides Berlin, Bavaria is the most visited place area in Germany. I think is quite well known, and Munich is that what I find so beautiful about Munich, also now going back, and I always, it's dear to me, is that it's a very livable city. I found it as a child. I realize it more probably since I have moved away, but it's very livable. It was already back then in the 80s, great public transport, easy to use the bicycle in the city. We have a lot of green space, big parks and gardens in the city. From an economical point of view, a lot of jobs are there, so it attracts also a lot of people. So life quality is pretty high. We have a lot of wonderful restaurants, and the weather, the climate is it's continental, but we have 4 seasons, which I appreciate a lot. So we have still very cold winters, even though they got warmer. But we have nice summers, and spring and fall is there. So we love to be outside and appreciate, being outside very much, because it's not the whole year round. So that is really, really nice. So and what I also find in Bavaria in particular is it's very traditional in a way. So that can be, of course, a little bit, well, is it only positive? I like the idea that it is very traditional, but coming then from Munich, there is also a mix of very progressive city, very modern city, and very open city. So that's why I love it. And it's a mixture of many different cultures, and it's so close to Italy also. That is very nice, in Austria, and the Alps are very close. It's just an hour drive and you're in the Alps for skiing or for hiking. So very, very nice area.
Beautifully situated. Shall we join Rick on the episode now?
Oh, yeah, let's see.
Munich is considered Germany's most livable city. While packed with history, it's also this country's Hollywood and Silicon Valley all rolled into one. This city celebrates its traditions with gusto, and at the same time, it remains a modern cultural force.
Marienplatz, or Mary Square, marks the old center. The neo-Gothic New City Hall, or Neues Rathaus, is only about 100 years old. It dominates the square. This inviting town square is now Munich's living room. The Glockenspiel performs at the top of the hour, as the Bavarian royal couple, celebrating their wedding day, oversees a joust. Bavaria always wins. And the Coopers do their jig. Virtually all you see was bombed flat in World War II and rebuilt since.
After the war, Germany's destroyed cities debated how they'd rebuild. They could reconstruct their old centers or bulldoze and start over from scratch. While Frankfurt voted to go modern, and today it's nicknamed Germany's Manhattan, the people of Munich decided to rebuild their old center.
Buildings cannot exceed the height of the church spires. Today, Munich's downtown is vital. People come here, rather than to suburban malls, to do their shopping. Munich's main drag is one of Europe's original great pedestrian zones. Local business people were enraged in 1972 when cars were first prohibited. But now, with 9,000 shoppers passing their display windows each hour, shopkeepers are happy. Imagine this street in hometown USA.
So since Rick just mentioned display windows, I have to share something from when I was there in September and October of this year. This is a shop window that I saw, and this is from the Queen of Sweden. So why does the Queen of Sweden have a dirndl? Well, she is actually a German woman. Munich hosted the Summer Olympics in 1972, and there was a young German woman named Sylvia Sommerlath who was studying to be an interpreter at the university, and she was working for the Olympic Games. And when the Swedish royal family came to town, they needed an interpreter, and her grandmother had been Swedish, so she helped them out. But what she didn't know is that the Swedish family had brought along a handsome prince. And so she was helping the family, and she got to know them, and they would go out in the evenings to some beer halls and some nightclubs and dancing, and they fell in love. And 4 years later, they got married. And when they were married, the night before, they had a variety show, and the supergroup, the Swedish supergroup ABBA, gave them a wedding present of a song. And I wonder if you can imagine what that song is. Since you're not here and I can't see you, I will tell you it is Dancing Queen, because she was young and sweet, only 17. And so that was their wedding present. And I thought that was wonderful. And so you have this sort of hostess dirndl for the anniversary. Daniela, do you have a dirndl? Do women wear dirndls anymore?
Well, I don't have a dirndl. I had my last dirndl when I was about 12, I think. But people do wear dirndl still and again, I should say. The dirndl originally is something that was worn particularly on the countryside, actually. And it was a work uniform, work dress on the farms that the women wore. And eventually in the mid-19th century, it came also into the city. So particularly waitresses in the beer halls, for example, or in other restaurants, taverns, they would wear a dirndl. Hit the apron also, so it's easy actually to just dry your hands on it or whatever, so it's a very practical dress. And on the countryside, people wore that, and there were different styles of dirndls also. When people got married on the countryside, and still today when people get married from the countryside, they would most probably get married with a dirndl in a Trachtenhochzeit. So that is with folkloric costumes. Everyone would show up with that, and the bride probably too, and the groom. Then very elegant, of course, has nothing to do anymore with the workers' style then. And in the city, it got kind of a little bit lost, I would say, in Munich. When I was living there, so it was not very popular, even though my mother always had one, also to go out, a very elegant one. It can be the most precious fabrics, actually. There's a wide range, really, and styles. But now the last 20 years, 15, 20 years, I would say it's got very popular again. So now everyone has, again, one or two dirndls, I think, in their wardrobe. And if it's not only to wear it when you go to the Oktoberfest once a year. And now you also have all price ranges, of course, so it's affordable. The traditional dirndl, though, does look a little bit different than the Swedish Queen's ones, yeah. So it's much longer, it's much more fabric normally involved in a dirndl.
It did seem a little short, but it was the 70s, so mini skirts.
She could wear it also. I mean, Dancing Queen.
All right, let's go back to the video.
I'm being joined by my friend and Munich guide, George Reichelmeyer.
So it's Reichelmeyer.
Reichelmeyer. So, Bavaria, the state, is a very conservative part of Germany. But Munich, the capital, is different. It's a very liberal city. One of the ideas of the council is to keep the traffic outside. And that makes downtown Munich a very silent place. It's quiet over here. You have green areas always, and a good public transportation system. So leave your car outside.
You can still feel small-town Munich here at the Viktualienmarkt, long a favorite with locals for fresh produce and friendly service. While this most expensive real estate in town would have been overrun by fast food places, Munich keeps the rent low, so these old-time shops can carry on. The Viktualienmarkt's beer garden taps you into great budget eating. Stalls sell the best wurst, sandwiches, produce, and much more. All 6 of Munich's breweries enjoy a share of the business. At the beer counter, a sign, which changes every day or two, announces which of the beers is being served. Today's beer is Paulaner. Beer gardens like this go back to the days when breweries stored their beer in cellars under courtyards kept cool by the shade of bushy chestnut trees. With the inviting shade and all that cool beer so handy, it was only natural that tables were set up and these convivial eateries evolved.
Daniela, why do you think that beer and Munich are so closely tied together?
Well, I think there's on all different levels. I think there are many different reasons. So historically already, when you think just of the name Munich, and we call it in German München, and which is a derivative from to the monks, Mönch, so to the monks. The first settlers actually in the area where we have Munich, the city today, were monks. And we have still today, many orders, Catholic orders that have their abbeys in Bavaria, around Bavaria, and a lot of them are still brewing beer. So they were the first beer brewers, we have to say. So it's starting with this, and then through the centuries, I mean, it was also always safer than drinking water as far as bacteria and so on. So that led also that it's never lost its popularity. And then we can't grow wine in Bavaria, in southern Bavaria. In northern Bavaria you can, Franconia, but that was the reason, I think, why it was always continuous brewed here. And then I think the last 250 years also with the idea of the beer halls, and of course with industrialization, more and more people coming into the city, and the beer gardens, that has won popularity and people just love it now. So particularly the beer gardens, and beer halls, Oktoberfest, the beer gardens is something that is very dear to people and people just enjoy. And we see that in the video also. I think everyone is there. So the whole society is represented in sitting in the beer garden, enjoying a cool beer on a warm summer day. So I think that's what we love so much about. And I think if you are from Munich or Bavaria, you have also it is just part of your life when you grow up in Munich, because your parents also probably go to the beer garden like I did as a child, as a baby. I was, as a child, I pretty much grew up in a beer garden halfway, I would say, I think. Yeah. So my parents...
Sorry, can you tell me more about that?
Well, yeah, my parents and my brother, so we lived very close to the Paulaner brewery where I grew up in the city center. And so we had also beer garden only 10 minutes walking distance from our home. And so every day, really during the week, after my father would come back from work and my mom would be at home, she would, at the end of the afternoon, she would pack our basket, our beer garden basket, and she would put in our dishes, plates, silverware, and bread, dark rye bread, and butter, and radish and tomatoes, cheese, anything that she would maybe prepare already at home. And we would take it then, of course it was cold food, but it's hot summer days, so that's great. And we would take it then, pack it with our tablecloth, and at 6 o'clock we are in the beer garden, or 6:30, with the friends also from our friends from town, and with their kids, they would come. And I remember very often, so 2-3 tables pushed together, and we would just all sit there, and then you unpack what you have and you share in between. And the only thing what you have to do is you have to buy your drinks in the beer garden. Yeah? So you can bring your food, but you buy the drinks there. And that was great. And we were there. And I think when I was a baby, I could just sit up, and it was just taller a little bit than a beer stein. Probably I had my finger already in, because foam was very fascinating. And my parents didn't stop me to lick probably on my finger, because it made me sleep. Probably, I don't know. But so but it was great. So for us, it kind of, it's the extended summer living room, I would say. Yeah, we are out there, and then at 10 o'clock you go back home, and everyone's happy, and it was not that expensive either. Yeah, so and you share, and you are with friends together. So that was very nice. Yeah, and my friends do it now too, and with their children, it's the same. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that memory of your childhood. And thank you for explaining more because I was worried when you said you were raised in a beer garden, but now I see it's all
good.
all above board.
Turned out okay. Thank you.
Also, I would like to point out for the viewers, so you can see this woman is drinking a beer, but if you look down the table, you don't have to drink beer in a beer garden. You can have something non-alcoholic. There's other choices. On we go.
The twin and distinctive domes of the 500-year-old Frauenkirche are the symbol of Munich, but an even more historic church is nearby. St. Peter's Church is Munich's oldest. Built where the early monks probably settled in the 12th century, it has a fine interior and some eye-catching relics. They say Munich has more holy relics than any city outside of Rome. Why? Because for over 100 years it was the Pope's bastion against the rising tide of Protestantism up here in Northern Europe. And favors done for the Pope earned the city lots of relics as gifts. The tomb of Mundida, thought to be a 2nd century martyr, was given to Munich by Rome as a thanks and as a vivid reminder that those who die defending the Roman Church go directly to heaven without waiting for Judgment Day.
So Daniela, if Bavaria is predominantly Catholic and the North, like Prussia, is predominantly Protestant, is there a North-South cultural divide?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. And it's right if you point out that the South is predominantly Catholic, or Bavaria and the South. So I would say South would mean south of Frankfurt, probably, if you look at a map. And north of it, you have predominantly Protestant, which is for us Lutheran in Germany. But so now also we move around more and more, as you do in North America. So there's more and more a mix up. People move, left and right in Germany, and up and down. So, but I do think culturally and traditionally there is still a divide. There are many different traditions in the North. As in the South, I think people are most familiar probably with Bavarian traditions and meaning foods, then the dirndl, like we just said, the dirndl, the lederhosen, for example, for the men, foods like pork knuckle, pork roast, dumplings, potato salad, you get everywhere. But or beer stein, the big beer stein, the 1 liter beer. So these are all things that are actually Bavarian, I should say. Yeah. And so it is the biggest export probably of Germany is Bavaria and Bavarian culture. And that has mostly to do probably with North America, with, of course, that this area was also the occupational zone after World War II. So a lot of what came to the US through the GIs that were stationed here, that were in Germany, is actually Bavarian from the South where they actually lived. But I always feel like when I talk to my groups about it also, I say, well, they came home and said, like, I bring this from Germany. It didn't specify, of course, that this is from Bavaria. But if you ask somebody in Berlin or in Hamburg, all the way up in the north, or do you have a beer stand, or where is your lederhosen, that could be even a dangerous question. Because they don't have lederhosen there, and they do not want to be confused with the tradition of the South. It's like you have in North America. There is a division, cultural division. Definitely, there are things that are different, and but which is great, which gives, of course, a different aspect. I think, in the South, we are closer to Austrians and maybe North Italians even than we are traditionally and culturally maybe to Northern Germans, yeah. And I think this division is based in religion. And now I would say it's the culture, which, of course, part of it is also created by the importance of religion back in the days, I think, yeah.
I would like some sociologists to figure out why dumplings come from the south of your country and the south of my country.
Well, it seems there is a lot of things that all come from the South, no, or so laid back being a little. So it's considered the Southern Germans, not only the Bavarians, but also maybe from Baden-Württemberg, are more the laid back Germans. And I think it is maybe true. So there's maybe this is it the sun? I don't know. A little bit more laid back, a little more relaxed maybe, and also we're very Baroque. Always a little bit too muchness. We like that in Munich, I would say, in Bavaria, a little bit of too muchness.
So it would not be out of character in Bavaria to be like, go big or go home.
It wouldn't be out of character, yeah. Sounds familiar, no?
All right, on with the show.
Yes.
Munich, or München as it's called in German, was long the capital of an independent Bavaria. Its royal architecture and grand boulevards constantly remind visitors that this was once a political and cultural powerhouse. For maximum imperial Bavarian grandeur, tour the Residenz. This was the palace of the Wittelsbach family, who ruled Bavaria for more than 700 years. Like so many of Munich's architectural treasures, it was destroyed in World War II and rebuilt since. To meet the Duke, all official guests had to pass through this gallery lined with 700 years of Wittelsbach portraits. Always trying to substantiate the family claim to power, they included the great Charlemagne as an honorary family member. The paintings are scarred by knife marks. In the final months of World War II, when Allied bombs were imminent, Nazi leaders gave the hasty order to slice each portrait out of its frame and hide them away. The Wittelsbachs were always trying to keep up with the Habsburgs, their Austrian imperial rivals, and this long string of ceremonial rooms was basically all for show. The exuberant decor and furniture is from the 1700s, Rococo. And of course, the Wittelsbach family had their own porcelain made for the palace. With all the mirrors, it's porcelain forever.
So, you know, the whole palace was really for showing off. And imagine the Duke bringing some of his most noble guests in here with all these miniatures in here. Some even painted with just one hair brushes. That was really a sensation those days.
So these were copies of all the great masters.
Copies of the best paintings.
The palace ballroom was decorated with ancient Roman statues. The Wittelsbachs, like other European royals, collected and displayed busts of emperors, strongly implying a connection between them and the Caesars. The palace treasury shows off 1,000 years of Wittelsbach knickknacks and Bavarian regalia, the inspiration for so many fairy tale crowns. Small mobile altars allowed kings to pack light and still have a focus for their worship while on the road.
I'm going to go back for 1 second because I wanted to add that I am a connoisseur of palaces and jewelry, and the Residenz in Munich, I think, is highly underrated, and everybody who goes to Munich should visit this spot, the Residenz. But also, we were talking about the too muchness, and I just am looking at this this little traveling altar. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I see what Daniela is saying right now.
The pack light.
but pack light, yes.
Still have a focus for their worship while on the road. This crucifix, carved from ivory, is exquisite. This reliquary, made in 1640, shows St. George killing the dragon. It sparkles with over 2,000 precious stones. You can almost hear the dragon hissing. It was designed to contain the relics of St. George. The palace also came with a royal garden. Today, it's the realm of everyday people rather than kings, dukes, and counts. Came with a...
Whoops. Daniela, we keep talking about the Wittelsbachs, and I just I wondered, are they still around? Is the family still in Germany?
Yeah, they're still, I mean, they're kind of all over the world. I think they live also partly in the US, but they're still in Germany. There is also still a head of a family, so they have not lost their noble title, differently than in Austria. So they are still the von Wittelsbach, and if we, I mean, not that I want, but if we would have again a kingdom, then we would know who becomes king. Yes, so they are involved very much in business, a lot of banking and insurance industry, believe it or not. The biggest part of the family, I think, lives in Frankfurt, actually. And yeah, and also they still have property, part of the castles, because the Wittelsbachers are also, for example, Ludwig II, the fairy tale king. He is also a Wittelsbacher, so he built Neuschwanstein and so on, Linderhof, and one of the castles also in some of the income belongs to the family, actually. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about the Wittelsbachers. No, they are fine. They're okay.
So I was thinking that you must be a little bit fond of them, or at least respectful, because I remember when we were on tour together and I was talking about the palace and I was talking about Mad King Ludwig, and you were like, Lisa, we just say King Ludwig. We don't call him crazy.
Yeah, well, I think particularly Ludwig is a splendid figure in history. And during his time when he ruled, so that is a very tumultuous time. Well, he was more interested instead. I mean, this is the time of unification of Germany, because Germany didn't exist before 1871, actually. So, and he was ruling during that time. And several wars were fought also left and right. And yeah, he was very much immersed into his building plans of the castle. So we like to call him eccentric.
That's much more respectful.
Yes, I mean, you know. And we have to thank him for building all these castles, because I'm sorry, just saying, we have to thank him to build all these castles, because the majority of income, of course, and visitors that come to Germany visit these castles, and the income also, not just the Wittelsbacher family, but also the state of Bavaria. So yeah, I sometimes say we should have just let him build more. I guess that would have been great.
Well, today, it's the realm of everyday people rather than kings, dukes, and counts. Back then, when the king called out for dinner, he called Alois Dallmayr. This royal delicatessen became famous for its exotic and luxurious food items. All the tropical fruits, seafood, chocolates, great wines, and fancy treats a king could want. Catering to royal and aristocratic tastes and budgets, it remains the choice of Munich's connoisseurs of fine living. Too many calories? Bikes can be rented quickly and easily at the train station. Biking makes as much sense in cities like Munich as it does in the countryside. This city, level and compact with plenty of bike paths, feels good on two wheels. In fact, with all these bike and pedestrian zones, you can often get around faster here on two wheels than you can by taxi. Munich's 200-year-old English Garden sprawls over 3 miles through the city. It's the largest urban park on the continent. On a sunny summer afternoon, thousands of sun worshippers enjoy its varied attractions at the same time. We're here in August, and the surf's up. Where the stream enters the park, its swift flow forms a perpetual wave for local surfers. Meandering further along, the stream becomes as laid back as the sunbathers on its banks. While a local law requires people to wear clothes on city trams, Munich's parks are sprinkled with nude sunbathers. Students, office workers, and families alike enjoy a sunny break from the daily grind. This relaxed attitude toward nudity is commonplace in much of Europe.
Daniela, do you think that's still true? Because this video was made about 12 years ago. And I can tell that there are some changes. I mean, you don't see people smoking inside the beer halls anymore. So has this attitude about nudity changed in Germany?
No. Smoking has changed, but nudity not. Still naked. No, so it's I don't know, it hasn't changed really. So there is really a relationship with the body, I think, that is very differently perceived in Northern Europe than in Southern Europe, or maybe in the US. So there is in Munich, in the city center, it's true, a lot of people go. Well, there is actually, it's not the whole park, and it's not that you walk around in Munich and suddenly people are all naked. So there are certain areas in the English garden that are kind of, designated to, I mean, if you want to, so to sunbathe nude. But otherwise, I think it's not an exclusive German thing. It's also Netherlands or Scandinavia where people have a relationship with, it's just a body. It is, I think the sexuality has nothing to do with that in that matter. So so that's still, it's still, a fact, People.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
There are several huge beer gardens within the park. On a balmy summer evening, these are a good stop for dinner. Traditionally, beer gardens allow picnickers to bring their own food and use a table, if they buy a beer.
We're eating as Bavarian as possible. I've got my fish on a stick here. What do you call this in German?
It's a Steckerlfisch.
Steckelfish?
Steckelfisch, fish on a
A
stick.
nice big pretzel,
Your Bretzen.
carefully carved radish. You've got what? That's
A pork knuckle.
pork knuckle.
Yes, that's a big portion of meat.
And big beers.
And big beers.
München.
Cheers.
Whether you bring your own food or buy it here, this is a classic Munich gemütlich scene. Gemütlich is a unique word for Bavaria's special coziness and knack for savoring the moment.
Daniela, before we go on, I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to talk about some Bavarian specialties. Any favorite Bavarian foods that we need to try?
Well, I do think the big portion of meat, the pork knuckle, is worth trying, and particularly also to enjoy the crust on the outside. That's very good, I think, the healthy part. And dumplings, yes, potato, and you see what I do. So they have this potato dumplings, bread dumplings that are made out of rolls, or also, of course, Weisswurst in Munich. Very typical for Munich, the white sausage, which is a boiled sausage. So it's not bratwurst. It's also, of course, bratwurst in Munich is good too, but that's actually not a specialty, particularly from Munich. The Weisswurst, which is veal sausage, very mild with a little bit parsley inside. So that's very typical. Or also Leberkäse. It's, if you translate it, it's called liver cheese. Has nothing to do with that. It is ground. People sometimes say it's like meatloaf, but it is much, much better, and it is not meatloaf. And so it is ground meat, very finely ground, and then baked in the oven. Yeah, and then you cut it in slices, warm with mustard on a roll. People love it. And sweet mustard is typical for Munich, sweet mustard, and it's different. I have tried a lot of sweet mustards all over. It's not the same. So there is in Germany, in Munich, it is particularly sweet and beautiful with this white sausage, for example, again, or then the roasts. Yeah, pork roast is of course something typical. With beer goes always good. Roasted Händel chicken, that's always very good. Yeah, and then if you wanted more exotic, Bavarian exotic, you can also try cow udder. Has anyone eaten
Excuse
that?
me?
Excuse me, have you ever had that? Cow udder? I cannot pronounce it.
A cow's udder?
The milk, cow's udder, yes.
No, I have never, I've never seen it. So this is very interesting and informative for me. So what goes in the cow's udder? Well,
it's baked, kind of. Nothing goes. becomes a little bit crunchy. So you can eat it in the Tal, the valley, in the city center, very, very easy access. So there is a restaurant in the city center there. They have all kind of this old school meals, so because people obviously ate everything at some point. So so that's it's a possibility, for example. Yeah, be courageous.
Okay, I'm putting it on my list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Munich's many grand facades recall the city's cultural importance for this region.
As the capital of Bavaria for centuries, Munich was able to amass lots of great art, and a cluster of museums shows off masterpieces through the ages. We've got 19th century art just over there, a wonderful collection of modern art across the street, and we're heading for the old masters at the Alte Pinakothek.
The Alte Pinakothek, or Old Painting Gallery, shows off Bavaria's best collection of European masterpieces from the 14th through the 18th centuries, featuring work by many of the greats. Botticelli's Lamentation shows the early Renaissance ability to show spirituality through human emotions. Leonardo's Madonna with a Carnation was done when the artist was only 21, well on his way to Mona Lisa greatness. And in this marvelous Holy Family, Raphael is clearly the master of grace. Paintings give a peek at the tumultuous events as Germany woke from its medieval slumbers and entered a new epoch. In this self-portrait, Albrecht Dürer, one of the class of 1500, heralds an optimistic new age. Dürer brings the humanistic spirit of Italy's Renaissance to the medieval North. Recently returned from Italy, Dürer portrays himself, the artist, with unprecedented self-esteem. When this individualism met church authority, sparks flew. Dürer's Four Apostles seem to reflect the turbulent times when the Reformation swept through Northern Europe. With the rugged features of everyday people, they take the Bible into their own hands, a humanist coup that ignited an all-Europe war. Looking around suspiciously, they clutch a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other, prepared to defend their beliefs.
In 1517, the German monk Martin Luther broke with the church in Rome. Suddenly, people had to choose, am I Protestant or Catholic? Albrecht Dürer actually met Martin Luther. He was impressed with his ideas and became one of his supporters.
The Catholic Church responded with the Counter-Reformation and also used art as a weapon. The church hired Rubens to show the epic battle, Saint Michael hurling Lucifer out of heaven. The lesson? Those who oppose God's will shall lose. Believers had the entire Mass to ponder these scenes.
All these heavenly battles mirrored what was going on in Europe. After 30 years of religious wars, a third of Germany was dead. Finally, in 1648, an exhausted Europe made a treaty enabling Protestants and Catholics to coexist.
Munich.
So I would like to share something nearby, a little ways away from the Alte Pinakothek where we just were, is a World War II memorial that is pretty near and dear to my heart. I have a personal connection to it. So when I was a young woman, my grandma was talking to me and she said, oh, your cousin Julian, our cousin Julian, has been interviewed by some film producers. They're making a movie about some other cousins. I'm like, well, that's great, Grandma, but I'm probably never going to see a West German film in my lifetime. So I put it in the back of my mind. But about 10 years later, when I was on my first trip to Europe, I was sitting around with my friend Connie and her family, and we were having, coffee und Kuchen in the afternoon, like you do. And I was trying to, relate to them. I said, oh, my great grandmother's maiden name was Scholl, and they said that we had some relatives. And Connie's dad, Casper, got up and went to the bookshelf, and he brought back what was basically the German equivalent of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and he showed me a picture of her, and I was like, wow, we sort of had the same shaped nose, and we had the same bob haircut at the time, and it really floored me. So I set about to do some research, and I learned that Hans and Sophie, brother and sister, had grown up in Baden-Württemberg, and they had been the children of the local mayor, and they'd been enthusiastic Hitler Youth members. But when Hans, who was the older by a few years, went to university, he was studying to be a doctor. And so he had to be a medic in the army when he was not in school. So they sent him to the Eastern Front. And he saw firsthand how the Polish aristocracy was being decimated and the Polish Jews. And he came back and together with some other friends at the university and their philosophy professor, Dr. Kurt Huber, they formed a resistance organization. And later when Sophie came to university, she's like, I want in on this, and nobody will suspect a young woman who's carrying papers. So she became part of the White Rose movement as well. And their primary act of resistance was printing and distributing these anti-Nazi leaflets. And you can see here, this is the memorial in front of the university, because Sophie was caught when she threw down some leaflets inside one of the university buildings, and a school employee saw her and turned her in to the Gestapo. So they made this memorial that looks like the leaflets being put on the ground, because there was a summary trial and they were all executed for political treason. So I wanted you to know this, because if people are traveling to Munich, this is a very easy memorial to see. It's outside in front of the university, open all the time. But also as tour guides, Daniela and I get these sorts of questions, and that's what I tell my tour members when we are talking about this. But Daniela, what do you tell your tour members?
Yeah, so it's true. So when we are going to Munich, as Munich, of course, being the city of the movement, so we have to talk about the Third Reich. You're right, and that's, by the way, also the university where I studied, and so it's very important. So for me, I find it important. Yes, I find it important. On the one side, I always want to make sure to commemorate. Of course, this is very important. Also, the victims of the Holocaust, and but I find in the same time it is very important to inform and to learn how. Because we Germans ask the same questions as the whole world asked the same questions. So particularly also maybe my generation, or my parents also. My parents were born in 1935 and in 1940, so they were children during the Third Reich. So obviously this has left traces in them. Also the post-war situation. I remember my mother saying once to me, out of nowhere, I remember she was ironing her shirt still. She was saying, life was not always easy after the war. I remember she was a child. She was born in 1940. So she said, like, we moved after the war, a few years after the war, and the second house was much better. It had a roof then. So, like for years. So this is, of course, this leaves traces. So what I find, and I'm pointing that out because I find nowadays that I get all the problem. I think it is important we as generations, we look different at events, and there's a new generation that looks different again. For me, my generation, so I still grew up with parents that have lived through the war, and with grandparents, with their parents, and that has less traces. Also, I'm the generation, in the 70s, Germany started to actually make the Second World War and the Holocaust and the Third Reich part of the curriculum at school. So every school child goes to a concentration camp minimum once. So if you grow up in Munich, then you go to Dachau concentration camp, which is just a few kilometers outside, for example, which I did twice during my school career. And besides, if you go privately, of course, but this is with the school, you have to go and you have to learn. So this is part, and you learn about very much. We focus at school, I find it interesting, very much on the Holocaust and how Hitler took over power, and the Holocaust, not so much on battles or of the war, how it was fought in the battlefields on the left and right. That's not priority in Germany at school. And I think it is, it's priority. It's not bad. And I cannot be happy about it, of course, but I'm happy that we are talking about it and that it's not quietly kind of pushed away, waiting until nobody remembers anymore. But this leaves traces, as for example, I find, and I'm sharing that with my guests often, because this is hard to imagine. I think, particularly when you come from North America maybe, that for me, the concept, for example, of national pride is something that I was never taught. And this is something you need to be taught because we are not naturally born with the idea of national pride, I think. And so my generation, very much, this was absent. So we also never learned the anthem at school, for example. So the whole idea of the nation and the folk and the people in Germany and being proud on Germany, we did not learn at school. So I'm still totally in absence of the idea of the concept of national pride. I don't know, I don't understand it, which is interesting to look at it, I think, now from a longer life and what I've seen along the way. So yeah, it is, so I always try to make this connection also, that it is very much, it is all about education and what we learn and how important it is to learn, particularly beginnings of these regimes, and because obviously it is wrong to think that this could have been only happened once and only in Germany. So I find it important to understand the where and how, and it is not just the mean gene in the Germans, and so that is my point of. And then on a private, more personal level, I try to share some stories that I have lived through. I know that when I traveled in the 80s or beginning 90s, people were still living that suffered very much during the Third Reich, I think personally, and they maybe never overcame the pain. And so I did encounter Hitler greetings and very hostile feelings from older generation, I have to say, often during my travels. Not often, but it happened. And so it's something which definitely leaves traces probably also in me. But I think the younger generation now lives differently. It's still part of the curriculum at school, very important, but I think the connection is maybe less there. So there's a different approach probably to things. So yeah, so it's a difficult subject. It will explode different. I'm already talking too long, so but it is very, it's very complex. Yeah.
Daniela, I'm honored to hear your perspective. You're a historian and you lived through this, and I know what you mean because we talk with our Dutch friend Jody. I mean, the people who actually lived through this are dying, and so we, as the people who are the children of people who lived through this, we have to carry those memories and make sure that they're communicated in an appropriate way to the next generation. So,
I think so, yeah.
So thank you. You didn't talk long. All right, let's see what's going on back in Munich.
Has so much to see, and we've saved the liveliest stop for last. For traditional Bavarian fun, nothing beats a good old-fashioned beer hall. Munich is Germany's beer capital, and the Hofbrauhaus is its ultimate beer hall. It comes complete with rivers of beer, cheap food, boisterous atmosphere, and ruckus oompa music. Even if you're not eating or drinking, check it out. While it can be extremely touristic, everybody's having lots of fun. Beer comes in huge liter mugs called ein Maß in German or ein Pitcher in English. You can order your beer Helles, that's light, Dunkles, that's dark, or Radler, half lemon soda and half beer. Munich is the home of the famous Oktoberfest, but you can enjoy essentially the same Oktoberfest fun any time of year right here at the Hofbrauhaus.
So I thought it was important that we talk about things or that I show you things that are, post-lockdown. So a lot of the stuff that we're seeing from the Hofbrauhaus is, as I mentioned already, it's a little bit older. But we didn't have Oktoberfest in Munich for 2 years, right, Daniela?
Yeah.
And so I came back, Daniela came back this year. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about what the tents looked like when I was there in September. And then I wanted to give you a little hot tip about crowds in Oktoberfest. So let's look at the outside of this tent and then the inside. So I just have to say, first of all, that the woman in the lower right corner that's wearing a chicken hat, that actually is a musical hat, and it did play the chicken dance. So I wanted people to get a sense of this, but Daniela, this is like 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, which is family day. Does Oktoberfest look like this all the time?
No. So this is, I would say, yeah, it looks like that during the week, lunchtime. Great to visit, great to have a tranquille lunch. But it definitely doesn't look like that in the evenings, even so on a Thursday, Friday, weekends, it doesn't look like that. Then it is full, and it is overfilled, and to not overfill the tents anymore. So they close the doors actually, so you cannot enter anymore, and they have a restricted number, of course, a defined number, and so then people have to leave, and then you can go in again. So, but that's also then how it's supposed to be in a way, because the half full beer tent is maybe comfortable, but it's not really probably how one imagines it to be, because it is when it's full and everyone is just partying, when it's great. So now it's hard to reserve. One can reserve, but that again, it kind of defeats the purpose of going in, finding a spot, squeezing with some people that you don't know at the same table. And I know this is not something that maybe is particularly popular and you're used to in North America, but I mean, we are, and this is part of it. And you have these long tables for 12 people. And if there is 10, then there's room for you, and boom, and you go in. And so there is a possibility to reserve, but it's not easy, and often it's only in the morning when it's quiet anyway. So companies reserve whole boxes, actually whole areas in tents, because that is also the time where there's most of the people or the business partners want to come to Munich to actually then being taken out to the Oktoberfest. I mean, it's kind of two things at once, but you have six big, or you have actually several, but the six big breweries are represented with these big tents where you have up to 7,000-8,000 people in when it's full. So that's and then there's smaller tents too, and you can also drink something else than alcohol, and there's some wine tents nowadays too. So, but in general, it's particularly the big breweries of Munich that are represented out there. Yeah, besides the carousels and everything too, of course. Yeah.
I have a souvenir that I wanted to share. Daniela, you know about the motifs every year, for the contest for the motifs?
Yeah, I know about it. Yeah.
So every year they have an artistic competition for the motifs, for the official motif, and they usually involve the Bavarian blue and white flag. You can see always a heart and some beer and a woman in a dirndl. And this is one of my favorite souvenirs that I have, because every year it changes.
Yeah.
So that's something that I hope they will bring back. They didn't have it this year, so I have the motif on a card, but they didn't print it on steins or coffee cups or hoodies like I prefer. But I hope that they'll bring it back next year. I promised you guys a hot tip, and it wasn't my coffee mug. So we're going to show you a little somewhat secret area at the Oktoberfest. Those are my tour members. They were so sweet. Hi, Monday Night Travel. It's Lisa. I'm coming to you live from Munich Oktoberfest, which is happening from now until October 3rd. And I'm in a great kept secret. Every few years, they have a traditional tent. You pay €4 to get in, but there's always a place to sit. The lines for the bathrooms are short, and the music is high quality. Come visit. So Daniela, you told me that you knew about this. Of course you did, but you said that you'd been there with your dad. Can you tell us a little bit more about my super kept secret?
It is actually a great secret. So that's the Oude Wiesen. That's the old Wiesen, or old meadow, we call it, because it was a meadow back then when the first Oktoberfest in 1810 actually took place, which was more horse race. So this in 2010 they started to doing this because for the 200 years anniversary they had this historical Wiesen, this historical Oktoberfest set up, and there you find all old carousels also a little bit, and the beer tents are much smaller, and you so the photographs are taken in early 20th century style, and they also brew the beer in that style of that time, so it is a different tasting beer that you get there, and that's quite interesting, and it is a good point as far as the restroom situation, because it is very important to take care of that and to be aware of the situation, because in the big beer tents, when they are full, for example, on a Friday night, you better go when you don't even think about that you want to go to the toilet, because the line will be so long. And when you stand there, think of me. And but they help you to keep you entertained, because generally very close to where the lines of the toilets are, and of course it's particularly women, there's also the brandy stand, so the schnapps stand where you get kirsch, cherry schnapps, and raspberry schnapps. So generally you make friends also while you stand there, because I'm going to buy one, you're going to buy one, I'm going to buy one, and then it's already our turn. So yeah, it's a whole different event.
And they usually have music playing outside too, so it can be a lot of fun. It's probably best I didn't know about the brandy tent. I'm a bit fond of the schnapps.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about Oktoberfest, very important seasonal thing to do in Munich, but we have one more important seasonal thing to do in Munich, which is the Christmas markets. That's very timely, because they're starting probably already, or they're starting in the next.
Well, not on. Sorry, they're not on yet. Yeah, but I've heard, my brother told me that they start now last week of November already, which is earlier than they always did before. Yeah. Also, those didn't take place in the last 2 years.
So this is the opening up of the Christmas markets. Okay, yeah. Well, let's go to this. So how many Christmas markets are there, Daniela, in Munich?
Oh, I think there is, I mean, the ones that take longer, I think there's about 12 or something like that, longer over several weeks. And then there is the sporadic ones, like on a weekend here and there. But so this is the main one on the main square, the Marienplatz, in front of the town hall, which is the traditional one. So there were not always so many. This one was always there. And it's nice because you have actually live singing down from the balcony from the town hall, which is very nice. But then you have in the city center several different, so this one has traditional foods, traditional Christmas decorations. Everything is very traditional actually there. And also I have to say it is quite consumer oriented, shopping oriented, this one. And then there are some with other themes. So this is, for example, the one in the Residenz. So that's the inner courtyard that you see surrounding. It's very beautifully set. It's much, much smaller. And this one is focusing on crafts. So there's stands, of course, also with food again and drinks. But then you have crafts like this, or you have a lot of wood carving. And you have, of course, a lot of nativity scene carved and so on. But they're also so with the spices and cinnamon and cloves and so on. So this is all for decorating the house. So they have a lot of these things in that one. And then this is a small one also. If I'm right. So this is at the Isar Tor. This is one of the 3 city gates that is still standing from the 13th century, which protected the city wall that protected Munich. And there we see a typical stand. I mean, nothing too flamboyant there, but this is where you buy your Glühwein or your punch, so your mulled wine, red or white, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, with shot, without shot, punch with more fruity. Then you get some orange in there, always to warm you up because it gets really cold actually in Munich. Sometimes we have snow also in December, most of the time a little bit later now. And then that's what we do. So you go there with your friends and you have a drink or two and you eat maybe something, a sausage or I don't know, whatever they have at the stand. And it's not particularly for shopping and for shopping Christmas presents. And oh, yes, you drink it like that. Sorry, yes, for example, out of a cup like you have there from 1996. Yes, because for us it is blasphemy to drink our mulled wine actually out of a carton cup or paper cup. It needs to be in one of these cups, and then you pay a deposit and you decide if you take it home or not. And a lot of people do actually take it home. And when I have groups there during that time also, they love to take it home, and it's a great souvenir, and everyone knows that they have had 55 Glühweins different. And every stand has a different Glühwein cup, so that's great too. No, but it's wonderful, and it is really a very casual, again, and being outside, and then you go home and you cozy up, and it's nice. So yeah, it's very great season also. Yeah. Oh, yes. And great food there. Yeah. So there you see, for example, bratwurst and in a roll, and in front of it, there is some Kässpätzle, which are great too. So this is kind of like the German version of the gnocchi. So this is potato dumplings, small dumplings, pasta. And then you have them either actually on a side dish next to a roast or so with a gravy, or you have them pan fried, melted with cheese on top of it, which is this style, I think. And what I see there, I think, Lisa, tell me if I'm right, that they have also this very ecological and very thoughtful, environmentally thoughtful dishes there, no? And the silverware, which is wood, maybe, I think. Yeah. And the dish is the waver, is like a waver, no? It's like
it's
cone.
what we make ice cream cones out of.
The ice, yeah. So it's the waffle, kind of a waffle, crispy waffle. Yeah, that's great, and you can eat it or not. So that is great, and shows also again that Germany, Bavaria, Munich. Germany, I should say, very much with this idea of this, because this is, of course, all these markets are great to just have a lot of trash. I mean, this just makes sense. But talking about the cups, for example, there you have deposit, you don't have trash. And this also avoids a little bit of that. And so that's very, very big subject, obviously, in Germany. Well, in some areas more than in others.
Really smart solutions. Yeah. Edible. I had one of these at Oktoberfest when I was leaving with the fried onions on top. And, I ate it and then I ate part of it, but it just doesn't taste like much. And so I threw that away, but it was, biodegradable, compostable. It'll be gone so quickly.
Exactly.
Anyway, so I thought that it's important that we talked about the Kässpätzle, because in some people's opinions, that is my favorite Bavarian dish.
That's good. It is very good.
It's like the best macaroni and cheese. Anyway.
It's true. It fulfills the same crave.
Then the next photo is your photo. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, well, talking about crafts again, and then that is now this time. So I, for example, with my mom, I made this at home. But so either you buy a wreath of fir or whatever branches of the evergreens, and then you decorate them at home, or you buy the ready-made thing, which you have here. So all the different styles of the Advents wreath. So we have a tradition in Germany, I should say, but in Bavaria, again, so with particular decoration, maybe, that on 4 Sundays before Christmas, we start lighting up our candle on our Christmas wreath, and we go through it. So first Sunday, the first candle, and then we have only 1 candle lit up for the whole week. And on the second Sunday, then we have the first 2, and then the third. And then after the 4th candle is lit up, then that's the last Sunday before the 24th of December, which is the day where we celebrate Christmas. And I remember that always vividly, because when we made these wreaths at home with my mom, so she would buy, and every year it was a different color and so on, then I knew it is now not long anymore. And I love, and I still do actually, I love this idea of having the candle on every morning when we had breakfast, and when the second was on, so Christmas was coming ever closer and closer. So that's it's something, very, very nice. So it's for kids great to know that it comes closer.
But you didn't have a Christmas tree until Christmas Eve, you said.
Yes, we didn't, because that is also traditional. So this is my mom, myself, and my brother next to me. And we are standing at my grandmother's house in front of our Christmas tree. Because the Christmas tree by tradition gets only set up on the 24th of December in the afternoon. And then we have dinner, and then after dinner, we will get the presents. So here we just had our presents, I think. So I'm very happy. And I don't know, I think my aunt is sitting where I look too. But yes, so only on the 24th. And then the Christmas tree only stays until the 6th, until Epiphany. And that's it. And then it is gone again. After. And then you have the needles everywhere. So you won't. Yes, that was my mom speaking, I guess. So. The needles everywhere.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that building bridges and hearing people's personal stories is the most important thing that we can do for armchair travel or for real travel. So I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. I am supposed to do a word from our sponsor. So I'm going to grab this Germany book. A new one will be out soon that was researched this year. I'm in the basement, so I don't have the most up to date. But I will personally say that what I love in this book, as well as all of our books, is that at the beginning of every chapter, there's a arrival in. So arrival in Munich. So if you're arriving by the train, it tells you everything you need to know about the train station. If you're arriving by bus, it's the same. If you're arriving by airport, it tells you where the beer garden in the Munich airport is, because that's super important information. And it tells you if you're arriving by car, like where you can park. And that, I think, is just one of the things that makes our books really, really, really useful. So we have some questions, and I need some reading glasses. So let's see what Ben has sent us. Oh, here's a good one. CJ wants to know, Daniela, do you put butter or mustard on your pretzels?
Very good question. I put butter on my pretzel, but I know, so where Auntie Annie's mustard pretzel comes from, that's so wrong. Oh, no, it's of course a beautiful idea.
Wow, slamming our shopping mall
Absolutely.
food.
Absolutely. You know, Auntie Annie, I like Auntie Annie, but it's a different thing. You know, it's a different press. But so I like butter. But when I am in Bavaria, actually, and I have the mustard from Bavaria, so the sweet mustard, not so that's, I think, CJ, what you talk is, it's the sweet mustard. It's not Dijon mustard. Then that's of course very good too. But on a warm pretzel, butter, that's exceptional.
Is there a particular name for this sweet mustard that's so special in Munich?
Yeah, Händelmeier.
Händelmeier. You heard it here first. Okay.
Händelmeier, yeah.
Alan wants to know, do the monks at Ondex still have the good beer and the stinky cheese?
Yes. I'm so sorry. Yes. What can I say? Yes, the good beer and the stinky cheese is still there. Stinky cheese is kind of in the Münster style cheese, I would say. Yeah. It is, we call them, well, that's maybe more in France, but it applies also to the Bavarian ones. There's the cheese that smells like angel's feet. In this way, it's Bavarian angels.
Nice. So for people who don't know, Ondex is a monastery about 45 minutes from downtown Munich, something like that. So where the monks brew the beer. Lance wants to know, is the legacy of reunification and East-West Germany still impactful today?
What does it mean, is the legacy?
Does it, the legacy is like the history, the inheritance, like, so this happened. Are we still feeling that this happened? What are the consequences?
Okay, sorry, yeah, of course. Well, I think we do still feel it a little bit, but less and less and less, really. There are still also, I mean, you can see it if you go through numbers. Just, I mean, salaries are lower maybe in the East. Cost of living is lower in the East, also in general still. But I would say I think another generation, and that's it. So we are not making jokes anymore about each other. There is no animosity about anyone and about each other, and people have moved left and right. And so I think it gets very less. I think the unification really is soon concluded, I think, yeah. But it's definitely still going on, and it is not just, it was not just a year or 2 years. No, it's still ongoing, yeah. But we get there, yeah.
All right. Yana says, I'll travel with students to Dachau soon. Any tips on preparing teens for facing this memorial site? How did they handle it when you were going to school?
Well, we learned a lot about, I find it depends how much time she has and all of it, of course. But I think what is important, if you want to be able to have time, that the children can, or the young adults can focus on the place where they are. They should already be very well prepared to how Hitler got to power and what the situation was between the wars, in particularly what the economical, the political situation was, and the Weimar Republic. I think that is particularly important, because then if this is really embedded and people understand it, then, because otherwise my impression is, if people are not prepared to it, you arrive and the only thing that goes through a head is how could we get so far? How could this happen? What monsters? Why did nobody do or say anything? Not that these questions will disappear because we cannot find an answer, but we can try to understand better. And I think it is also, this visit should always be an occasion to share how Hitler got to power, because this is the outcome, but where it could have been stopped was in the beginning. And that is what Germany and the international community, where they missed out to stop Hitler or underestimated Hitler. And I find this is very important in our time today also, that we understand the signs early on, because otherwise when it's too late to stop, then it's too late. Also today it would be too late. So I think that's very important. And the rest depends on the time. And I think it's important to leave some free time also, if possible, to people.
I agree. Time for reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Speaking still of young people, Emily would like to know, what is the drinking age in Germany, and what is the culture around introducing alcohol to young people? We asked this of the woman who had her finger in the foam of the beer at the beer.
So drinking age. No, so it is for beer, wine, 16 in Germany. You can drink, and hard liquor is 18. And the culture, it depends. I mean, this is a very personal, but in general, families, I would say in general, the people are relatively relaxed in the houses of letting the children try alcohol. So I know, and this is not only in Germany, this is in Europe in general. In France, it's the same. Families sit together, and if it's even a 10-year-old child wonders, well, I see my parents drinking wine or beer, I think most of the parents would say, well, try it. And it's also not an issue, so they wouldn't be seen as horrible parents. Even in a restaurant, the next neighbor table would not think that these are horrible parents, because they see that this child is trying. And I mean, this is personal. I just think it's maybe not a bad thing, because if you let a child or a young adult, a teenager try, generally they don't like beer, they don't like wine, because it's not that good, it's bitter or whatever, and it's not that exciting anymore. So when we are 21, we are not, I mean, I'm not saying, of course we party, of course we drink, but and I'm not saying, I don't know what is better or not, but it's relatively casually handled. Yeah.
Okay, well, you answered that question. She wanted to know about the culture, and you answered that question. Alice wants to know, what are the best Christmas markets outside of Munich?
Well, I like, Nuremberg, of course, is the mother kind of Christmas markets. Nuremberg is wonderful. Then personally, also, I like Salzburg a lot. It's a little bit smaller. It's not far from Munich. It's easy to combine also. And then there are Christmas markets, very beautiful. Also, different country. Prague, famous for its Christmas market, and also Colmar in Alsace is wonderful at Christmas time. So this is close to the Black Forest, if that is to be combined. That's very nice. Yeah, Vienna has very elegant. Vienna in Austria. So Nuremberg is very close to Munich, Salzburg very close to Munich, and so that's. And then smaller towns, all towns have Augsburg. They have very beautiful ones there.
You could day trip if you were sleeping in Munich. You could day trip to Nuremberg. You could day trip to Salzburg. It would be possible. Matt would like to know, where can one buy lederhosen or dirndl?
Well, in Munich, it depends. So you can, and it depends really. It's very simple. It depends on your budget. You have many more options shortly before the Oktoberfest. If you go to visit the Oktoberfest, I would not buy anything before, really, because I think you get very if you just for the joke, you buy something less expensive when you arrive. You find something. If you want something really nice, beautiful, you go to a Trachten shop. Trachten is it's the name for the folkloric costume. And in Munich or in Salzburg, also in Salzburg, in that area, you find beautiful, or in Bavaria. Yeah.
That's the word that you want to be looking for if you're trying anything online. Trachten?
Trachten. Trachten. Trachten.
Perfect. Daniela, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me, Lisa. Thank you, everyone.
My husband Scott says hello. He found out that you were on the show, so he says hi. So I'm gonna I'm just going to show our last little bit. So please join us next week when we are going to travel to Croatia with our friend Tina Heaty and talk about the Dalmatian coast and the Istrian Peninsula. Please go and sign up for the Rick Steves Europe Travel Festival of Europe to get your entries in for the tour giveaway. And Daniela, one more time, it was my extreme pleasure to spend the last few hours with you, talking with you. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, everybody.